Okay. Welcome to the panelists in my session, employer session. You have just heard, I hope some of you were around, you have heard the very strong voices from the trade union about the dilution of the laws, about the efforts to undo what was even won by the working class in India during the British days, and the passion with which the unions are threatening to strike back. I think this session is about employers, and without much ado, I think I will give the space to them. Mr. Rajiv Dubey will take some time to join us. He is away. We will begin with Mr. Dilip Shenoy, who represents the FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He has earlier worked with CII and was also the managing director of National Skill Development Corporation. Over to you, Mr. Shenoy.
Thank you, Mr. Khanna. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Sushil Khanna, and thank you, the Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation, for this opportunity, and congratulations on organizing the webinar on labor regulations in India, and having a great array of leaders in academics and trade unions and other sectors of the economy. Kerala as a state has taken many steps in this area, especially with regard to migrant labor and skilling, two of the areas where I've actually worked very proactively with the state in the past and continue to do so currently. I think in the background of the recent initiatives by several Indian state governments, as you said, to alter the edifice of labor laws in the country, it is an important juncture where we should step back, think, and look at practical issues and how do we address the crisis. So if you look at the situation, there are actually three situations: pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. Right? Now, post-pandemic, we don't know when that will be, because we don't know how long the COVID current situation is going to continue. The lockdowns have been removed progressively. Now we have unlocked one phase going up, and we are trying to get economic activity back on stream. So if you look at FICCI and the history of working in partnership with the labor organizations, we have a strong partnership with that. The All India Organization of Employers is part of the tripartite process and also represents India on regional and international dialogue. We constantly advocate the simplification and rationalizing the laws without diluting rights and responsibilities of both the employers and the workers. The balancing the interest of all stakeholders. And we project the need of the employers and the economy in the types of jobs that will emerge in the future and the skills required, and creating a framework so that existing people in the workforce could reorient their skills or upskill themselves. And
Mr. Chenoy?
Yes.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Each speaker is getting 6 to 8 minutes. Yeah?
I'll finish in 6 minutes. I'll finish in 6 minutes. Don't worry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very clearly. Okay. So during COVID, we have made multiple representations to the government. It is now 12:11. I will finish by 12:16 because 1 minute I've already taken up. Right. Primary focus was on how the firms survive this pandemic, and some of our recommendations related to the workforce was to give interest-free loan for up to 3 months of wages and allow firms to pay wages during the period of lockdown. Unfortunately, this was not been accepted. Some of the trade unions also had said that this was made, and we said, is there a way to utilize the ESIC and the other funds lying, which could be loaned to MSMEs and small enterprises to enable this? It was a great area where tripartite work could be done, where the government could have been, if labor and employers had got together. The second, we said, extend the PF contribution to all workers, irrespective of putting a cap on minimum wage. And also the third, which is the most hotly debated point, and I think the least understood point, was allow flexibility to adjust working hours, keeping in mind the requirement of social distancing and the constraints on timing and transport. So what we said was that if only 30% of the workers can come on one day, right? Can we, do 3 shifts, or can we increase the number of working hours, and the 30 or 50% actually come on every alternate day, so we don't violate the overall number of hours in a week, but we can extend the working hours in a day with adequate compensation to the workers. And this we did specifically for the period of the pandemic, because if we can't get the factories going, with 30% of the workers, there is no way that you can actually, achieve even 60 to 70% of the production and keep the factory going. We also talked about a special focus on migrant workers. We said that we create a database which is under the process. We talked about promoting immediate cash and food relief, which was done in the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. We've also said provide an incentive for the migrant worker to return to work and encourage worker housing. The worker housing point, which was actually announced, was a specific FICCI recommendation. We also said that given the announcement by state governments that you will have to continue to pay wages, you should also say that if the employer gets a pass for the worker and enables the worker to come to work, and if he still refuses to work, then you should allow no work, no pay to actually continue. These were the recommendations that we actually made pre-COVID, and in the next 2 minutes, I'll talk about this. In the COVID period also, one of the challenges that we were saying different people were coming and inspecting the factory and saying, you got back to work, but you don't have enough sanitizers, so we're going to close your factory, and we'll come and inspect you after a month, and then we'll open it. So our request to the state governments and others was, can you remove this burden of compliance and this threat of closure from the employers and take it forward, and whatever could be done, and can you do it in that way? Before the lockdown, and when we were discussing the labor codes, we had 4 principles. We said there should be commonality. Different laws and different labor laws had different terms of, when it will be applied, to whom it will be applied, the period. Different states have different regulations. So we said, can there be commonality? Second is, some people are covered, others were not covered. A lot of the previous speakers have talked about the unorganized sector not being covered. Can we talk about comprehensiveness? And then can we talk about compliances? And the previous leader, the MP, actually talked of self-inspection and self-certification. And then he said, could there be continuity and certainty in the laws going forward? So these were the points that we had made. We would definitely look forward to the reforms going forward. And as said by the previous speakers, after collaborative discussion and multi-stakeholder engagement. So I have actually completed my 6 minutes, and I will not like to take more time, Mr. Khanna, and thank you very much for this opportunity. If there are any questions, I can address anything later.
I hope you will come back later. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Can we have now Mr. Unnikrishnan, who represents the Thermax actually, but also the Indian industries on National Committee on Industrial Relations. So, Mr. Unnikrishnan, yes, sir, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Let me clarify. I represent the CII, the Confederation of Industry, also the National Committee Chairman for Industrial Relations. Warm good afternoon to our Kerala Minister, Thomas Isaac. Sri Isaac is spending the full day for a conference like this. It's an indication that the importance accorded by GIFT for this particular program. Sir, my points are very simple. We need to have an understanding, not misunderstanding, to ensure that we go forward. Because the ferocity with which people were talking in the earlier session is an indicator that even after 70 and odd years of independence, there is a lack of trust between an employer and an employee. And representing an organization which pays possibly one of the highest salaries for workmen, more than ₹1 lakh for the workmen in the UK, have just signed an agreement with them for their voluntary reduction of salary by the blue-collar employees of the company to face the pandemic. So you can always have a harmonious relationship. So we need to work together both employees and workmen. And be assured of the fact that there is no intention in the organized industry of this country to exploit labor. What Dilip mentioned about, Mr. Chairman mentioned about, we represent the organized sector, predominant part of it. Unorganized sector is the problem. So that problem needs to be solved. India is already divided in multiple ways. One more division as far as employment is concerned is organized labor and unorganized labor. The problems do prevail in unorganized sector, and we need to be addressing it, and we need the trade union to ensure that you protect them. And don't worry, the organized sector, they are well provided for, we'll take care of it. But one thing is, when we take politics into this kind of economics, then there is a difficulty in that, Mr. Kumar. Because please remember, we are on the path of creating wealth, which we leave the politicians to be distributing it. There's no wealth. So in that, what you need, the distributors should be supporting us rather than criticizing us beyond a level. And I'm quite surprised about the fact that the labor law suspensions done by various states at this point of time is only to solve a temporary problem. Because in the time when the lockdown got opened, the second week of April, I was approached by the CEOs of 7 or 8 very large companies who pay their workmen in excess of 50,000 rupees average salary, and they were not reporting for work because some of them were also in essential services. And the reason is that the government has told that there is no need during lockdown period. We need to be paid salaries, so they are not coming. So we had to be intervening. I had spoken with both the national general secretaries of the unions, I'm not naming them, asking for their intervention. So whatever is done temporarily suspension, some of them for 1,000 days, some maybe 3 years, it is a temporary affair. We're trying to make an issue out of that to say that we have suspended entire labor rights of this country. Sorry, sir. There is a fundamental duty to the policemen of this country, the frontline workers of this country, the nurses, the doctors are working 12 hours and 24 hours. So why won't a worker who's in a factory who's manufacturing items needed maybe for a water treatment plant, which is needed to supply water, why won't he work for 12 hours? So let's also understand this. Some of these are temporary in nature, and let's not eulogize it or maybe elephantine way of thinking that this is an issue. It's not an issue. None of us are for permanently making any of this. We will never take away the rights of the workmen. We are assured of the fact. Representing an employers association, the largest one, I'm guaranteeing that we are not here to exploit any of the labor. And many of our labor laws were made before we became independent. There were 44 different central laws. And if we were to add the combinations of the state laws put together, there are more than 21,000 compliances needed in this country to run an industry. How painful it is for us to be running an industry in this country. So please cooperate with us. So the central government is subsuming it. It's not one particular government. Initiated during the earlier government. All of us only want simplification of law. So the same law applies everywhere. And ensure that the last of the law that we are possibly talking about, the 4 courts, social security. Without a social security, you will never be able to implement any labor laws. Everybody will violate it. So that is the most important one. We are working along with the government and along with the trade unions so that this is satisfied. That is coming to that. There are a lot of misunderstanding. We need to be interacting a lot more between the labor, the government, that's the policy making authority, and the employees so that the misunderstanding is removed. And we are not here to exploit anybody. That is one more point. The last point, Mr. Khanna, I want to make over here is that nobody's job is secured, including the people sitting on the other side. A member of parliament or a member of legislative assembly has to stand for an election every 5 years. They cannot guarantee they'll get their job permanently. I cannot guarantee that my job as a managing director of Thermax companies is permanent. I can lose my job tomorrow. So the era of job security, which is created in the 18th, 19th, and beginning of 20th century, is disappearing. So my request to the trade union leaders are, security of job is not what is more important right now. How the social security will take care in case you lose the job is what we need to be working forward. And we are a part of the world which is moving into 3D printing, metal deposition, artificial intelligence, and advanced robotics, and the digital manufacturing, where the importance of labor is going to be coming down. Unless we skill up for the capabilities which Dilip has mentioned about it, there won't be any jobs left for human beings. What will you legislate? What will you form a union beside? You will make a union of robots? So let's have the clarity. We as a country are at a crossroad right now as technology is overtaking manufacturing and service industry. We need to upskill our people to make them employable. That is the most important thing. No job security for including anybody. and the gap between the blue and white is disappearing. The jobs are going to be great. There will be more unions in the IT industry and artificial intelligence industry in 21st century than in the manufacturing workplace. Manufacturing workplace will be overtaken to automation, but India will not be able to stop it. It is going to be done by the countries who have got shortage of population and intellectual capability. So India should be in the mainstream to ensure that we partake and we don't have a political difference stopping us to advance from that. So Mr. Khanna, I stop over here just to guarantee that none of us here from the employer side are there to exploit labor. We want labor to be recognized, respected, and compensated. Thank you once again for inviting me to participate in this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a passionate defense. But you will have many other questions to answer. The trade union people are saying they were not consulted. That's the main thing. You were consulted, obviously, the way you are saying, but they were not consulted. We'll come back to this during the discussion. I'm handing over to Mr. Shyam Kumar, who is the...
Mr. Khanna, will you adjust your camera so that we can really see your face, man?
Okay, sorry. Is that right?
Only up here, above your nose we can see. Ah.
Is that better?
You're actually coming too close to the computer when you speak for your voice. So if you just keep a distance, we can see you well.
All right. So, Mr. Shyam Kumar, he of course runs the largest newspaper, Mathrubhumi, in Kerala, but has been a politician himself, member of the Legislative Assembly. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khanna, and thanks a lot, Institute, for organizing this webinar. So the question is like, how do we improve our investment climate and increase employability? Let me just touch upon a few points. Now, India is ranked 16th on ease of doing business by World Bank. There are some areas where our performance is dismal, like enforcing contract, which is much below Senegal and Djibouti. Registering property, which is much below Zambia, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. Starting a business, which is now below Vietnam and Sri Lanka. Paying taxes, which is much below Uganda, Tunisia, Bhutan, and Mongolia. Now, the areas where we can improve is trade across borders. We are ranked 68. Resolving insolvency, ranked 52. India shows better performance in protecting minority investors, getting electricity, getting credit, dealing with construction permits. Now, we need to improve drastically on enforcing contracts, the time and cost to resolve commercial disputes, and quality of judicial process, procedure, time and cost in transferring property, and quality of land administration system, procedure, time, cost to start a limited liability business, payments, time, total tax, tax rate, compliance with tax regulation and post-filing process. And when improve moderately on trading across borders, as I said, time and cost to export products and import auto parts, time, cost, outcome, and recovery rate for commercial insolvency, and listing of legal framework for insolvency. And we are doing well in minority shareholder rights and corporate governance, collateral laws and credit information system for getting credit. Electricity is the procedure, time and cost to get connected to electricity grid, reliability of electricity supply, and transparency of tariffs. Procedure, time and cost to complete formalities to build warehouses, and the quality control and safety mechanism in the construction permit system. Now, as we discussed, some of the states have suspended labor laws, like increasing the working hours to 12 hours, and a lot of that has been discussed at length. I don't want to go into this. Let's see why China. Now, we are, like the whole discussion is about how do we attract companies who want to relocate from other countries to India. Now, why China? Like Tim Cook said, the number one reason is people. China has extraordinary skills, 2 million app developers. China has an intersection of craftsmen, like skills and sophisticated robotics. This intersection is very rare to find anywhere in the world. This intersection is very important for precision and high quality, which enables a high scale of productivity of millions, hundreds of millions with zero deficits. Popular consumption is that China is a low labor country. That's no longer true. China stopped being a low labor cost country many years ago. Recent companies prefer China as the type of skill sets and the quality of skills available in one location. Vocational aspects is very deep in China. Countries around the world have now woken up to this reality. Now, as you know, we are part of the ILO, the Convention 1919. Article 51 of the Constitution of India provides that states shall endeavor to foster respect of international law and treaty obligation. The reality is paying decent wages and keeping working hours limited are key to evolution of a mass market. Only then it will create demand for not only goods, but also leisure time engagements like movies, television, books, newspapers, sports, travel, dining out, etc. Well-informed customers not only want quality of the good price, but also value of conscious. Many companies we see the buyers are conscious about the manufacturers environmentally friendly or taking care of the laborers, or is there any child labor, etc. Increasingly, customers value companies that are being benign towards workers and to the environment. The reality is several fashion brands has exited from from Dhaka because of the Rana Plaza fire in 2013, which kills thousands of people were cramped in textile mills. Backlash from major fashion brands like Adidas, H&M, Marks & Spencer, Tesco to sign and accord occupational safety. Decent working condition, wages and occupational safety helps attract investment from large global giants. Giants do not want to get associated with countries treating workers like slaves. Respect for labor norms is the reality of globalized business. Japan is a highly unionized, most unionized workforce in the world. The management ropes in the unions to tap into workers' creativity and improve quality of production and process. In 1914, when Ford offered higher wages to their workers, there was a huge protest saying that what are you doing? That actually enabled them to increase the productivity and quality of their product. Workers are the backbone of industrial enterprise. Unfortunately, the recent action of some of the states are counterproductive. This cannot attract investment. Workers must have the right to speak to their managers as equals when matters of principles or rights are involved. If they do not have such channel to do this peacefully, they will resort to strike and violence. Any changes in policy of whether or not it is good for India. India has in the recent past seen some of the worst labor agitations. For example, Honda motorcycle in 2005, Gurgaon, you know what happened, followed by 2006, 9, 10, 16, there were strikes. Recall Coimbatore, in fact, beaten to death as HR manager. Maruti, Regency Chemicals, they all had problems. Even in Italy, Graziano Transmission CEO was beaten to death by a mob for dismissing workers. A lot of industries have faced these issues. Now, COVID-19 has shattered the lives of millions of Indian workers and their families. Workers, the migrant laborers, are, they go back to their home where there's no job, there's no money, but they go back because they want compassion. India's shattered economy will have to be built again. Will need an architecture to be more resilient, creating more employment with dignified work and more social quality. Having said that, archaic labor laws need to be reformed. Labor welfare and social security amendments, administration must move away from inspection to facilitation. Today, compliance is only those companies who comply substantially. Social security departments like PF, ESI, etc. must stop harassing companies complying substantially and must bring in more firms into the net by increasing their vigil. Department must be seen as enablers, not as prosecutors. With rigid employment protection law, firms lose freedom to conduct business efficiently. Cumbersome procedure of redundancy poses great challenges. Government approves of retrenchment, priority rules for the re-employment or retraining obligation provides older workers with job stability while leaving a younger workforce vulnerable. Fixed-term contract employment will boost youth employment. Rigid employment protection laws will...
I would like to remind you of the time limit, sir.
I'll just finish in 1 minute. Firms to hire workers informally. That's why the informal sector is growing, where labor outsourcing is happening. Restrictive steps by dismissing workers will cause diversion of firms' attention away from innovation, research, and development. This will result in relocation of countries with flexible regulation and reduce the benefits of trade and liberalization. When labor regulations are too cumbersome, economic experience, higher unemployment. I'll repeat just 10 things I would like to say. Aggressively focus on skill development to enhance productivity and quality. Reforms in settlement of commercial dispute and judicial process. reforms in land administration system, making commencement of new businesses easier, making tax compliance and post-filing process easier and racialized tax rates, making exports and imports easier, strengthening legal framework for resolving insolvency, acts archaic labor laws through tripartite discussion between government, employees, unions, and employee organization, transform labor administration from inspection to facilitation, social security department to be enablers, not prosecutors. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you. Thank you for a very balanced presentation, sir. And I want to underline what you said, that the wages have to be high enough so that workers can enjoy some leisure and some goods other than just food. And what has happened in the lockdown to migrant workers has shown that they don't even have the ability to survive even a few weeks without work. Thank you very much, sir. I will invite Mr. Rajiv Dubey. We have been waiting for him to join us, and he has just, I can see he's here. So, Mr. Dubey, over to you. You are representing the employers organization. So I went through your CV. You have a long stint at Tata's as well as at Mahindras in the HR sector. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So we are truly in a period of intense disruption where what started as a medical disruption has quickly moved into economic and social disruption. And to return to any semblance of normalcy from where we are today, among the critical things required is the massive creation of employment and the promotion of a just and equitable labor ecosystem, which promotes not only decent work and social justice, but also ensures productivity and innovation. For a country like India, the goal has to be to create a labor ecosystem which will make us competitive and yet be fair and inclusive. So it's competitive, fair, and inclusive. These three have to coexist. Now, for this to happen, it is imperative, A, within organizations, industrial relations is which is treated with the same rigor, sense of urgency and importance that is given to other business processes like finance, operations, marketing, and new product development. This implies having a strategy, being subject to continuous review, and being continuously on the top management screen radar. Right now, it is treated purely in a transactional mode and left to the factory manager and the IR managers to strike a deal. The focus should be on productivity and innovation rather than on short-term labor cost arbitrage. Management focus only on the cost side and not looking at the potential benefits of investing in labor will lead to myopic decisions that are self-defeating in the long run. And unfortunately, this has been the approach from both labor and from the management point of view. Short-term, transactional, the wage negotiation based. Unleashing the potential of labor must be accompanied by a fundamental shift in paradigm from the win-lose approach that both labor and management have had till now to a win-win approach where through dialogue we try and find solutions to each other's problem. Listening with an open mind, having empathy for the other side's point of view, these are critical skills that both labor and management need to embrace, and I'm afraid it is not so at the moment. It is time for us to stop pointing fingers at each other and to take responsibility for looking at ourselves in the mirror and focusing more on what we need to do in this whole exercise rather than blaming others or doing nothing till someone else creates the conditions which we look for. The informal workforce, migrant and contract labor have come center stage in this scenario. While contract labor as a mode of employment is here to stay, what is required is to look at the conditions under which contract labor operates, with special focus on compensation, the behavior of management and the permanent workforce vis-a-vis contract laborers, their involvement in innovation and productivity initiatives, their training and skill development, their level of engagement, and a sense that they're being heard and their contribution is being recognized. And of course, basic hygiene factors like safety, medical facilities, canteen, uniform, and social security. Contract labor issues, in fact, the informal workforce in general is a ticking time bomb in India that needs to be addressed immediately and not put under the carpet. If the challenge that the nation faces is restated in terms of the need to develop human assets to build competitive businesses, rather than merely managing the short-term costs of labor, we stand a higher chance of engaging all stakeholders in a collaborative process to achieve consensus on the way forward. And collaboration is essential if we want to see consensus from all stakeholders, which is what? The union government, workers, management, and civil society, rather than relying only and merely on the imposition of policies and regulations. Now, changes in some labor laws may be required. People have talked about that, but changing laws will be an incomplete solution. Its management and labor capabilities, practices, and processes of dialogue must be improved to develop cooperation within enterprises towards the win-win goal of continuous improvement, competitiveness, and growth while being fair and inclusive. So we need to reframe this contentious debate about labor laws into collaborative deliberations about more comprehensive changes in human resource strategies. There are enough research studies that show that focus on developing human capital is far more effective in improving competitiveness than management and labor approaches, which are focused totally on the costs of labor. The one question that needs to be answered with data is the impact on a firm's profitability if higher compensation is paid to contract labor. Now, this will vary from industry to industry, but there is an analysis of this cost across multiple sectors and scenarios, which seems to indicate that in most cases, providing more equitable compensation to non-permanent labor, A, has limited negative impact on key profitability and return on capital metrics, and B, leads to many benefits like better industrial relations, improved incentives for skill development, and higher labor productivity. I believe that while we have a complex situation, it can actually be used as a great opportunity to revisit many old paradigms and create a platform where the various stakeholders, employers, employees, government, media, and civil society can get together to create an ecosystem which is competitive, fair, and inclusive. Now, these three words, I'm sorry I'm repeating them, they need to be our North Star: competitive, fair, and inclusive. It is my firm conviction that if, one, we focus on the right questions, B, approach the problem with an open mind and the determination to find solutions, C, focus on unleashing the potential of the workforce and the ecosystem rather than just short-term labor arbitrage, we can, in fact, herald a new era of industrial relations, which will be characterized by innovation, productivity, and growth while being fair and inclusive. The key is for all stakeholders to adopt a win-win approach, understand each other's point of view, and be willing to give and take. Dialogue provides the key. Now, I must tell you that I'm a member of the governing body of the ILO, and dialogue is key there. Sorry for repeating again and again. I have many other things to say. How many minutes more do I have, Khanna Saab? Am I already over my time?
2 minutes. Yeah, you're over your time, but give you 2 more minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, fine. Okay, so I am not here to hold a brief for either workers or employers. There may be some who do things that are clearly unacceptable and need to change their ways, but equally, the vast majority would like to work within a framework of principles and values which unleashes human and system potential. This requires that both sides be willing to listen and provide psychological air, especially to the younger workforce. Keep looking for third alternatives through openness and dialogue. Believe in the power of win-win solutions rather than win-lose conflicts. Always remember to keep channels of communication open, especially during periods of confrontation and strife, and avoid taking positions that are irreversible. And finally, believe in ourselves that we can bring about large change by working on many small changes. At the end of the day, there is no silver bullet. It is a process of people engaging with each other, wanting to make a difference, having a passionate desire to create a better world, staying the course, and be prepared to run the marathon. I believe that we have an opportunity given the geopolitical and economic shifts that are taking place, and the decisions we take today could either convert that potential that we have into a reality, or it can be a disaster. And we owe it to ourselves, our constituents, and our future generations to move ahead with wisdom and foresight. And I hope that that is how it will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for again a balanced presentation. I want to underline, you said with the unorganized workers, contract workers, it's possible to pay more, which is what the speaker earlier had mentioned also, Shyam Kumar. We will be coming to this in some other ways without impairing the competitiveness and the profitability of the companies. Okay, but thank you, but there will be some opportunity for discussion later. Let me now call the next speaker, Mr. Rajesh Jha of Adani Ports at near Trivandrum, and he's also the president of Trivandrum Management Association. So, Mr. Jha.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Sri, fellow speakers and distinguished participants. I'm really very happy that this has been arranged by Gladi Institute of Finance and Taxation, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I see a lot of eminent speakers talking about labor regulations and their views, and I would like to add upon my experience.
The camera, if you can adjust a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Yes, you are audible.
So I would like to touch upon my experience of building this mega seaport at very near to Trivandrum, which is the site is Vizhinjam. And we have been talking about doing this port, which is the deepest water port for the last 2 years. And this will go into formation for another couple of years. And we have been employing something like 750 workers. Out of that, something like 50% is guest workers or migrant workers, and 50% is local workers. Just pre-COVID, we had excellent working situation. And in the last 2.5 years, I felt that Kerala, after working in so many other states, will be a very difficult situation. But last 2.5 years, I had a very pleasant experience working with the people. And because it was a blend of people from Kerala and people from all other states like UP, Bihar, Bengal, and Odisha. And just pre-COVID, we were very apprehensive that there will be a chaos. And like what Rajiv Dubey said, that with the transparency, with the kind of dialogue, we interacted with the people, and we had one representative from, say, Odisha, one representative from Bengal workers, one representative from UP and Bihar. And as a team, we interacted with a lot of government officials. And I'm very happy to tell you and this panel that practically 50% workers, this committee arranged for them to go back. And those 50% who went, they went with proper dignity, with proper condition, and 50% decided to stay back with us. So that is a very good sign, because they were looked after very well. And that is the power of collaboration. That is the power of dialogue that we had. And I have a very firm view that if management and labor gone are the days that we had a confrontationist attitude, if we do not collaborate, management and labor does not collaborate, if man and man does not collaborate, man will collaborate with machine, man will collaborate with artificial intelligence, and that will not be a happy situation. So it is very important that we create a win-win situation by more and more collaboration, so that the management and labor sit together, try and design a solution. They look at the business as a whole, which is giving revenue to the management and to the worker, and let's see how do we make it give more to the worker and to the management. Because finally, it is that we have to compete at a global scale. And if we have to compete at a global scale, we have to come out of this attitude of confrontation. we have to come in a mode of collaboration. And that is what we thought that this forum should address, that how do we collaborate? How do we make things easier? How do we make things more productive? And that is what I wanted to dwell upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for keeping time. I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Khalid, who represents the Small Industry Association in Kerala. Mr. Khalid.
Hello,
Yes, sir.
hear me?
We can hear you. Please come on.
Okay.
We can see you. We can hear you.
Honorable Ministers for the Finance and Labor and other dignitaries on the meeting. I am representing the small scale industries in Kerala. I'm requesting for the government for the exempt all the labor laws from MSME for the below 20 workers. That is our request for the government for the. We want to work for the mind free for the improving for the MSME units. I can speak the Malayalam, you can understand? No.
If you are comfortable, please go ahead. English will be better because there are people from all over India here. But, and I don't follow Malayalam, but if you think you are comfortable, please go ahead. Hello. Hello. Mr. Khalid. Mr. Khalid.
Khanna sir, we can ask Shreyams Kumar to translate it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mr. Shyam Kumar, can we request you to translate? Okay.
Continue with the next person.
Okay. Okay. We are not able to get him. Can I invite Mr. Karyappa? Mr. Karyappa, who represents the Planters Association in Kerala and also a member of UPASI. Hello. Sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and special thanks to GIFT and Kerala government to have arranged this webinar. Thank you, Labour Minister, sir, and Finance Minister, sir, for giving the opportunity to listen to us. We are meeting at a time when the world is reeling under the effects of COVID-19. The situation has disconnected people from further from all our human relationship, which can naturally have a wide range effect on our health and consequently on the productivity of the workplace. Our country, along with the other parts of the globe, is going to enter into a phase where the number of jobless would be increasing considerably, especially in the scenario of huge inflow of Indians from various parts of the globe. The situation calls for an immediate opening up of employment opportunity, which in other words means opening up of new industries too. For opening up any new industry or even to continue with the old industry which we have, the investor would certainly need a congenial atmosphere to operate. Creating such an environment is certainly the responsibility of the government. It was probably in this background that certain states in our country had attempted to temporarily suspend certain labor laws. I fully realize and acknowledge the fact that workers are the backbone and even partners in progress of any industry. It is essential that their fundamental rights are protected. They have every right for a dignified life. The labor laws in our country were developed over many years, considering the various necessity of working class and cannot be suspended overnight. But what I feel is that there is a need for change in the labor laws, keeping in mind that survival of the industry is essential in order for the working class to enjoy a decent life. The last 3 months of this epidemic has already had disastrous effect on many industries, including plantations. On account of the economic crisis, companies are unable to even pay the normal wages to the workers. All commodities prices have crashed below the cost of production. There is a loss of income for the workers, as a result of which there is also reduced economic activity. At this juncture, I would like to convey my appreciation to the government of Kerala, who came up with timely economic and food material support to the people of the state. Industries may have to contemplate cost cutting, which may include reduction in salaries, finding cheaper raw materials, and so on. Although the government has come out with the drafts for 4 labor codes combining the various labor laws, I do not see much of a change in many of the provisions of the various enactments, except for simplification in the filing of returns, etc. The major requirement of any worker is guarantee of employment, decent wages, acceptable work environment, and social security. At the same time, the management would wish to have a minimum price for all commodities, peaceful industrial relations, including the right to pay for only what is produced. The Industrial Relations Act was enacted for investigation and settlement of disputes, in settling disputes. The concerned authorities are mostly seen forced or browbeaten to accept the demands of the workers, from the workers' demands and the trade unions' demands. Here I should admit that all workers or trade unions do not adopt such methods. There should be an ample provision in this enactment to break such approaches. Workers and trade unions, it's our request, have to get out of their illusions and understand the ground realities. The major area of financial outflow for plantation companies is the cost of provisions of social security. It goes without saying that social security is the responsibility of the government. But in plantations, amenities such as medical, education, accommodation, water supplies, sanitation, etc. are the responsibility of the management. Another worrying factor is that the workers after their retirement refuse to vacate and hand over the accommodation given by the management. The only way to get back the houses is to file eviction petitions, which, as everybody knows, are never decided in time. On the other hand, the workers continue enjoying such illegal occupation for years, causing difficulties for the management, both administratively and financially. The Plantation Labour Act has to be amended suitably to take care of both the above situations. In raising demands of the increase in wages, etc., the workers and trade unions should always look at the capacity of the industry to pay. Any demand going beyond the paying capacity shall have disastrous effect on the industry. The government machinery should be equipped with suitable provisions in labor laws to intervene on such situations and arrive at a peaceful negotiation and reasonable settlements. While prescribing minimum wage, the government should also take into account the cost of social amenities being provided by the management, instead of equating this with other industries where there is no compulsion for meeting cost of social amenities. Similarly, there should be difference between the minimum wage and the negotiated or the settled wages. And there should be a provision in the Minimum Wage Act to have these two thoroughly bifurcated. The necessity to have productivity linked wage structure in industry cannot be overemphasized again and again. The system of just collecting wages without contributing equally is on the increase, and managements are coerced to agree to unacceptable demands of the workers and their representatives. This has to change.
Wind up very soon. Eh?
If the industry has to grow and contribute in providing more employment opportunity and revenue to the government. Unfortunately, even government machineries are helpless before the pressure of workers or trade unions. And therefore, suitable amendments in labor laws is necessary and need of the hour to link wages to productivity and pay wages only for the work or productivity contributed. Abolition of temporary suspension of labor laws is not the solution to present day problem. The central government came up with the intention of helping the small industry by fully taking care of EPF contribution and assisting the major industries, but definitely reducing the contribution rate. Such measures have certainly helped the financial starving industry and much appreciated. Therefore, should also be long-term planning to help industry survive and grow, for which suitable changes should be thought of and brought in before the 4 codes on labor laws and finalized. Thank you for giving me an opportunity again to put forward.
Thank you very much. Is Mr. Khalid available? Mr. Khalid? Mr. Khalid from Small Industry Association, we are waiting for you. It seems he's not able to connect for some reason. So let me just say a few words and summarize what has been said. And then maybe we can take a couple of questions, not too many, because we are coming to the end of the time. I heard 2 kinds of voices in this session. One is from Mr. Dubey and Mr. Chinoy and others who talked about collaboration, who mentioned, even Mr. Shyam Kumar, that we need to raise wages, we need better social security, and if India is to be competitive in the global market. And I heard others, including Mr. Khalid and some others, Mr. Unnikrishnan especially, I thought, had mentioned that the suspension of labor law is what industry had asked, but it's only temporary. Okay, if I understood him correctly. But either way, the earlier session we have heard the trade unions that this was done without consultation, without taking them into confidence. It's a direct attack because it has never been done before in the last 100 years, since some of these laws are very, very old. And this is seen as by the working class as an attack on their rights, and they are ready for a long fight. And if you are going to come out of COVID, either you can confront the workers through long strikes and fights, or you can build a collaborative world. I just want to quote, before retiring, I spent some time in Germany, which has a co-determination system. Half the board is controlled by workers. And the first chancellor who did it, who actually increased representation to 50% after the Second World War. Okay, Konrad Adenauer, he used to say that for a country to develop, there must be peace. There must be industrial peace. It must be at peace. Okay. If India is to be peace, India is to be competitive, India is to develop, it cannot do it by suspending laws, by pushing all the burden on one section of the people. Okay. I was very happy to hear Mr. Dubey and some others talking about that this was not the way to go forward, if I got it correct. We are willing to take a few questions, let's say 3 or 4 questions from anybody who would like to put to the employers or representatives. I hope Gift will facilitate the questions. We have just about 5 minutes more for this kind of thing. Am I to believe that there are no questions, or we are still trying to get them?
Sushil, you see, the problem is handling questions coming from the floor. And this opportunity being given to the employer community is something unprecedented, by the way. I mean, since they're not used to responding. Same is the case with the trade union leaders. You know, the academic personnel, they are used to speaking among themselves. This is arguably the first time we are exposing ourselves to listening to the comments of representative organizations in the world of work. There is a problem organizing our thoughts and coming back with the responses, appropriate responses. What we can do is, as was suggested by Dr. Isaac, we can differ questions and answers to the concluding session. Whoever wants to come back with questions can raise them there. To the extent possible, we'll try to answer them. Right now, we can only say thank you for the wonderful presentations wherein they made impressive exposition of the concerns of the employers and earlier of the trade unions. Let's face the fact, we are talking about a closed society of the organized sector, except in the case of the plantations, which is an industry that historically suffered in the sense the most important employer of India 50 years ago has over the years waned largely the outcome of globalization. That's why it raises extremely important questions. We'll come back to that later in the evening. But for the time being, it's important that we recognize the importance of tripartite collaboration, the ability to speak to each other, act in concert, and leave a lot of these things to the international ILC, Indian Labour Conference, where decisions ought to have been taken, rather than leaving them to the discretion of individual states to sabotage the entire structure of existing labor laws. And the points were raised wonderfully well by all the participants in this forum. And the kind of concerns of the employers we do take cognizance of, and we are aware of them. But then our concern, and I think the concern of the whole of India, ought to be on those people being driven to the margins. Can anything be done to protect their interests? All those migrant workers which Sushil repeatedly raised concerns about, are we ever in a position to offer some semblance of security to them? These are the thoughts which I believe should pervade in the light of the kind of exchange we had. And I'm grateful to the eminent representatives of the employer community for flagging their concerns and setting the stage for a very meaningful dialogue involving representatives of labor, certainly from the unorganized sector, and taking on board their concerns and designing institutions which can take care of all the workers one way or the other. That is the central purpose of this kind of a meeting. So Sushil, what you can do is right now, please wrap up the discussion. We will get to 2 o'clock.
Okay, I'll do that. I want to thank everyone for the participating. Joe's has already done my job. I won't add to it. I just want to flag one or two things. We are often concerned that we are not industrially powerful country. You know, we are Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar stuff also mentions about it. Even our soldiers wear stuff, uniforms which are imported from China on the border. And we are one of the major reasons through this informalization of the workforce, perhaps Indian industry has got flexibility in some sense. All the migrant laborers, which we were not aware of the number and the size till this crisis happened, has shown that the Indian industry has enjoyed the fruits of that labor in some form or the other, either as contract employees or their suppliers use them and so on and so forth. Okay. But the fact remains the Indian factory sizes are out of line with the rest of the world, with mass production of the 21st century. Many of you were talking about automation, that how automation will have to be coming in. But just look at the factory sizes in China. How much of the workforce is in factory sizes of 1,000 or 5,000 workers and above? And how much is in India? India hardly has large factories, okay? Because India fails to be able to handle, to work collaboratively with the workforce. Indian industry, unfortunately, has found other ways of doing it. by fragmenting it out into its suppliers and so on and so forth, which is one model, but which has many disadvantages. It makes you, I believe at least, doesn't make you competitive in the long run. Okay, I want to thank everybody, and I hope you will stay on to listen to academics who are going to say many things, including the analysis of what's going on in the workforce, the kind of wages they get, the kind of protection or lack of protection that they have, and so on. And you will join us for the discussion at 5 o'clock, because there would be some questions for the employers also at that point of time. Thank you very much. And please, we are having a break for 1 hour for lunch, and we will reassemble at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khanna. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
The next session will start exactly at 2. And the concluding session, where I think both the employers and trade unions would have opportunity to respond to the questions that are raised by the academics, will start at 5. And we can extend it to 7:38, doesn't matter. But there will be sufficient time in the concluding session to respond to the issues that have been raised. Hope you will join us there. Thank you very much.